Okay. Looks like we're streaming there. All right, we're in business here. And guys, I might give it a little bit of time so at least have um some people join in here and I need to make sure that that went to the right. It did. Okay, very good. All right. We're about to have some fun here. Kurt, would you mind just sort of here at the get-go, uh maybe we'll go over some of this intro and overview and talk about the workshops in general. Is there anything that you'd like to say to people that are watching this just as a preview, let's say out on YouTube, about like what these workshops are about and why they're so valuable and why people love them so much?
Well,
I
I
know
mean, what I like about them and what I think is important about it is that these workshops, they do deep dives into specific areas that people have some kind of interest in, and it's like oftentimes they're things that get leaked over from our live streams or from our accelerator program where we're trying to show some things and we think, you know what, let's spend a little bit more time with that. And also, I like to cover the basics. Sometimes I love to do these basic workshops where we're bringing in people who are just brand new to Power Apps and they're trying to understand how to do certain things and it takes some of the mystery out of it. And I also love within these workshops, I could talk all day about this, Derek, by the way, but I also
okay.
love about what I loved about workshops is that we cover like the things that we cover at a deep angle to where we can learn practical ways of doing things like how we do it in the real world. And we talk about problems that we have with when we're using these kinds of things. We talk about the drawbacks and we talk about the good stuff. And I don't hear you. I don't hear anything you're saying, Darren. You've left me. Darren's audio is gone. And that's something else I love about workshops is it gives us an opportunity to work on our equipment. We get to look at our equipment and see what works and what doesn't work. And usually it works perfectly until you have a workshop and then it doesn't work anymore. That's usually what happens. So probably one of his 20 Bluetooth speakers took over his Bluetooth signals. What happened? He's got to figure out which one it is, and it could take the rest of the live stream to get to that, but or live stream the workshop. So I guess I think workshops are really important because it gives people an opportunity to get some hands-on. I'm hoping that we get some hands-on experience within some of these things.
Check one, two.
Sometimes, oh yeah, we hear
There
you.
you go.
Okay,
You're
cool.
back.
You
I
got
don't know
us.
what happened there. I'm sorry. Well, it sounds like you're going great, man. Continue on. This
Well,
is
I
good
keep getting
stuff.
interrupted with your technical issues, so now I'm messing with you. But I guess I'm going to just go back and just say that the workshops give us an opportunity to really practice some of the stuff, and it gives you guys an opportunity instead of just. My hope is that instead of just watching me do something on the screen and you guys try to replicate it, that we can come up with some kind of like in workshop lab that we can kind of work on together, and have some fun with, and maybe pick on each other a little bit about. That's always kind of fun too. Um, but I'm one of the things my goals in this is that hopefully sometime people are going to start seeing these workshops and the word's going to get out about them. And we're going to be able to bring in people that haven't really spent a lot of time with Power Apps yet and haven't given an opportunity to look at it. And we get to bring them in and show them what we can do with it, you know. And then I'm also hoping that we can get some people and see some people to see the value in being very good at this, that where it's a life-changing type platform where you can actually work in this thing and maybe change your career. Maybe go do some freelancing for yourself, or get a job working for some corporation or some company that needs some Power App stuff done. So there's so many opportunities with Power Apps right now. It's such a new thing. It's not new. It's been around for a few years now, but in contrast to like C++ and Visual Basic, it's pretty new. But it's so new that there's a lot of people who have a lot of ideas for apps, but there's nobody to program them. There's no Power Apps people to program them. So it's a real lucrative place to be. It's a good space to be in right now. And I'm hoping that these workshops draw people in like that. And then we can find some people who maybe want to go into the accelerator program And then that's when we get into the real training where you get, it's a workshop all the time. So there's some accelerator students in this workshop right now, and they could probably attest those group calls turn into workshops almost every week. We got like 3 or 4 of them every day or every week, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that's the spiel on workshops. I'm hoping that we can really learn something today. So today we're going to be doing workshop on the app formulas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that app
Formulas.
formulas is a big topic. Um,
It
did you
is.
want to kick that off a little bit, Darren, or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I think we're close to jumping into the basic concepts here. Just a few things I wanted to mention. So people are joining us here in Zoom. That's the actual workshop. And then I've done a little live stream on YouTube that we'll keep out there for probably 30, 45 minutes, just so you guys, get a little bit of sample of what a workshop like this involves and give you the opportunity to sign up. So I have modified the pricing of the workshops. I had 4 different levels if you wanted to be in the live ones, if you just wanted the replays, all this stuff. I just wanted to make it nice and simple. $25 a month membership. You get access to everything in the past and the future, as long as you keep that membership going. And if you are an accelerator student, um, you are not to pay for that. I'll add you to the group that I have down in the video description here in YouTube. Uh, so if you're an accelerator student and you're not in that group, let me know and I'll send you an invite directly. And so guys, if you see this live stream just sort of cut off after the 30th, and I might actually announce it, just know that you could always just click over on the school link. It's pretty much the only thing I have in the video description right now. And if you want to see that, you'll get access to all the other stuff as well. Um, so I wanted to mention that. And our workshops go typically, we always start at 1 p.m. Friday, EST. And at first we're thinking, oh, well, 3 hours is good. But what we'll find is everybody is really excited about this, and we end up having lots of Q&A when we're digging into it, and we just have a lot of fun. So uh, the hours go by very quickly in a workshop, and I just reserve 4 hours for a workshop now. And at the end, I want to be giving you guys practical labs and exercises about this topic. So I'd like to get your guys's interaction here, and feedback. And we'll hopefully you've got a dual screen and you can open up Power Apps in another screen and start writing these user-defined functions or these named formulas and working inside the app.formulas. Um, as you're hearing us talk, or whenever we go off to the lab time, which is what I remember back in Kurt's class. He would lecture for an hour. It's like, okay, it's time for the lab. Let's go across the hallway with we had these big gateway computers, these big CRT monitors. I don't know if you remember that, Kurt. Um, and we spent like an hour and a half there, and we're like, Kurt, I can't figure this out. So we do have a Q&A here in Zoom. Hopefully everybody can see it. And if you don't mind, Matt, are you able to ask a question? I mean, you're a panelist, so maybe you're not able to, but you can type a question and we'll either answer it. Okay, I just heard a pop, which means maybe a Q&A came in.
No, I can monitor Q&A.
Okay, very good. And we could either answer it verbally here live, or sometimes we could just type it in. Okay, so very good. And we'll probably take a break within 2 hours. So 3 p.m. EST, we'll probably take a 15-minute break, and then we'll go for up to another 2 hours. And I'd sort of like to go over our outline, what we're planning for this workshop. So we're going to start off with some basic concepts. We're going to talk about why move away from the app on start, because I'd say 90% of the stuff that you're using App on Start for should be in your app formulas. Okay. And I'm going to dig into more reasons why. And Microsoft is always modifying things. About a year and a half ago, um, they did not allow you to use navigate in app on start. And you're like, oh, I can't use that now. Well, they created a app.start screen. That's where that's supposed to be. And we'll go into that. And we'll talk about imperative versus declarative code and which one we can use or both inside the app formulas. We'll go over all of that. And I think this was just a extra toggle that we had in there. I'll delete that. We're going to go over the syntax on how to do things. We're going to go over maybe 2 or 3 examples, and we're going to stop, do Q&A. That might be our 15-minute break, and then we're going to have some practical exercises, like little mini projects, like, hey, see if you can figure this out. So another thing I'd like to make sure I'm getting your guys' feedback on this is I think I accidentally hit the enter key there, so I'll take that out. Is a user-defined function or named expression that you put in app.formulas that you've used and you found to be really helpful. You know, when we open it up for discussion down here in the Q&A, then I'd like for you to share that. And let's say you've got an idea that you want to put in and you just don't know how to do it. We'll share that as well. So be putting these in the Q&A, and we'll be sure to answer everyone's questions by the time we're done. And Kurt, is there anything anything I missed just for this intro and overview and just going over going over the outline here?
No, I think so. I think you got it covered pretty good.
Okay, great. So basic concepts. Um, you know, I should have had this open. I thought I did. Let me bring open a browser here and make sure I've got Power Apps. So take this moment, guys, to open up Power Apps yourselves. And I'm going to create a fresh, new, clean, pristine application. Okay. And I'll step through all that with you guys. Okay. So I'm here in my sandbox. I know I'm in the right environment. To create a fresh, new, blank app, there's different ways you can start with Copilot, with data. You can a design, which is the one I'm going to pick, and then you can start with an app template. Okay, so these are your 4 choices. If you're trying to create just something fresh, new, and you don't want anything else in there, you'd click on this, and then you see all these options. I'd recommend just clicking on blank canvas. Now, if you want to do a responsive app, I would probably recommend one of these 3. It's going to have containers already set up for a responsive app. So just want to mention that. But I'm going to go with a blank canvas. I would probably say that with responsive design, it's definitely possible. And I don't think it's too hard, but it's not really great for a beginner topic. I wouldn't try to teach anybody or encourage anybody to try to do everything responsive right away. Master the basics and then eventually pick up the responsive design, because there are a few gotchas that I found with like a responsive design. So, all right, so here's Power Apps here, and I need to make sure that I've got access to my outline. If I can bring that down. Yeah, I'll probably move this in and out if I can. F11, there we go. All right. Overview of the app object. So within Power Apps, there's a few objects that you can reference. What is an object? It's like a virtual thing. You think about a thing in real life, IRL. A table, a microphone, a keyboard. These are all objects in the physical world. But when we're talking about objects in coding and software development, Power Apps, each thing has got like properties. So my keyboard that's in front of me has a property of it's black in color and it has some RGB capabilities. So properties help you describe and really cool objects allow you to change the properties. Okay. So let's talk about a car as an object. Um, we can give the car an input like by using the steering wheel, hitting the gas pedal, and like how much the throttle that we're pressing with our right foot. That's like a changeable property, you know. So I'm gonna go over here to the tree view. Now, if you don't see the tree view, okay, make sure you've clicked on this first item that looks like 3 layers. And what we see here, the only thing we have is a screen. And if I click on app, and something I think I will do, if it'll allow me, is I want to zoom in at least a little bit, maybe 125. And then I'm in it F11 to make sure this is full screen. Very good. Now I click on app and the screen is no longer selected. The app is. Now I can expand this and find out there's another object called host. Now that's something completely different. But what you can do is you can do a search on YouTube, do a search for Darren Neese host. And I've got a little video on that. But so once you select an object, what you'll find is you got properties popping up on the right side here. Okay. But then you can get at all of them right here. Okay. An app with this name already exists. What I'm going to do is say App.Formulas app. And guys, I'm going to make this app available to you guys. I'm going to post it in school whenever we're done here. And I just want to now, Matt, do you have by any chance the live stream going on a different screen where you can monitor any chat going on? I'm gonna throw the link to that in chat. If you're able to do that, you might want to mute it so we don't have any echoes.
Yeah,
But
I
there's a
can
live
definitely do that.
awesome, thank you. All right, so we've clicked on app and we have some stuff here. Now I'm going to save this, and I try to remind everybody I'm like a broken record. Save early, save often, because if you go into a project and you go into settings, you'll find out, or at least you'll think this is true. Save changes every 2 minutes. All right, well, have I been in this project for 2 minutes? You'd think it's being saved. It does not start this until you save it for the first time. So I did that, and I see the name of the project up here. I should be good. Okay. Now I say save early. So that's that part. Save often is good, even though it's saving every 2 minutes, just to make sure you have these like little restore points. Have you ever gone into Power Apps and you mess something up and you're trying to fix it, and about 3 hours later, it's like, oh man, I just want to roll back before I was messing with this today. Well, as long as you're hitting Control S or click on this little save icon, it's going to like if you ever play video games and it's like boom, save checkpoint. So if you die at the boss, at least you'll start at this checkpoint and not all the way from the beginning. So it's sort of like that. Save early, save often. Okay, so I'm going to click back on the app object and we can see some of these things here. We can modify the description. You can make the user confirm that they want to edit the screen. So these things are out there. And you go to advanced, you can see the rest of everything else. Now, let me give you a tip that applies to everything in Power Apps. Every control, every object, more than likely, has some properties that start with the word on. It's like a little prefix on start, on message. I haven't really messed with that too much. Behavior run when the app receives a message from external sources. That seems interesting. We have on air. Now, I'm expecting to see a few more things here. But that might be it. Because okay, yeah, we have on air, on message, on start. And what I was sort of looking for was formulas. So that goes to show you right there that formulas is not a block of code that is called on or run when something happens, what you do is you create something out formula with a name, and then you can refer to it by that name. So like a global variable or something. And we're going to get into all of that. Um, so for years, we've had this function here called onStart. Okay. And what you might want to do is create a collection for your menu. So you might have a gallery that's serving as a function, and you might create all the items for your menu. Kurt, please throw out any ideas of things that you normally might want to have in your app on start.
Well, so a lot of times you want to define collections, you want to create your data, you want to initialize your data, initialize any variables, like maybe you've got some context variables that you need to be initialized. Like, so let's say you've got something where you want to select a new, you want to determine if you're adding a new record or not. So you might have a variable out there called LOC is new. You might want to set that to false. Or maybe you have some pop-up boxes that you might have an LOC show pop-up. You want to initialize that to false. So you kind of put those things into the onStart, or you could put them into the onVisible property of your form. But the problem with that, so sometimes you get some wrinkles within that. The onVisible oftentimes won't start. You don't want to put things in the onVisible if your screen's never going to be invisible, right? So if you've got a home screen and everything's being done on that one screen, it might work the first time when your program runs, but then if you start going to do something else, the variables won't reinitialize again. So you gotta watch that. So oftentimes I'll put that stuff in the onStart, where I just initialize when I'm starting up my program for the first time. I put them there. Also constants. You might want to put some color constants out there. Maybe you've got a specific gray color that you like to use. Maybe you might want to call it that specific color. Maybe you've got an error color that you like to use, or maybe you have a success color that you like to use. So you go ahead and create those as constants. And of course, hopefully we're going to talk about all of those things today.
So let me take a wild guess here and say variables can vary and constants stay constant.
That's right. They never change.
Yeah. So constants are so if you got something like the menu, let's say we don't have a dynamic menu, but we're just going to create a collection here, an app on start, and those are going to be the menu. And if they don't change stuff to your apps, that's what we mean by constants. But if you have a background in computer science or taken some computer classes, maybe you've done a little bit of coding, maybe in JavaScript or Python or something, and almost any other language has got variables and constants. But what's weird, Kurt, is that we don't have a keyword in PowerFX to say, hey, this is a constant, do we? I can't think of. Yeah.
Not that I know of.
But this is sort of a way, once we get into the App.Formulas, you're pretty much creating a variable that, and it may not change, but in other languages, you can say maybe a keyword of const, and then you might say an integer x equals 5. That might be something that you might do. Now, Kurt, is that perfect C++ or C notation? Here's how you do that in that language.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Since I've done a constant in C.
And Kurt, you've probably forgotten more about programming than most people know, to be.
Well, especially if you haven't used the syntax for like 6 months. So when you're in another language, it takes a minute to get the syntax. But you're basically right there. And I think the reason I just want to put that out there too. I think that Power Apps handles memory a lot different than traditional languages do, because it's a browser-based situation. So there's a reason why you have constant qualifiers or constant keywords in other languages, because of the way it gets handled on the stack. So the way the memory is being processed. Probably in Power Apps, in the deep dark recesses of Power Apps, constants aren't probably being processed the same way as in traditional languages, I bet.
We have a good question that's very related to what you were just saying here. Hey, this is from Nick. Hey, Darren and Kurt, Do using constants instead of variables have a noticeable improvement with optimizing the speed of the Power App? I'm wondering why I would want to use them if there is no noticeable gain.
Okay, I love that question. What a great question. Um, and I don't know that there would be a noticeable gain, especially with small data, like what we're working with simple data types, like say maybe a number or something. Probably you're not going to notice a big difference in that. But when you're talking about, imagine having um, and this is the answer why you would want to use them. And I use them all the time for specific reason. That is the do not repeat yourself thing. Okay. So
Yeah.
if I've got this perfect color that I go out there, it's a hexadecimal number, so I don't have to remember the hexadecimal number like Matt does. And Matthew likes to memorize hexadecimal numbers now, it seems like. So but since I don't memorize that, I can go out. Let's say I've got this perfect gray that I like to use, and I can say Kurt's favorite gray, and I can put that hexadecimal up there in the constant, or I can put like my error for like the color red. I got this perfect red color that I like to use for my errors, or I've got perfect green for success. So I put those in a constant, and that way I just say Kurt's perfect red or Kurt's perfect green. And I know that. I know that. I know the value. I don't have to memorize any of that stuff. And I only do it that one time, you know. Also, you might use like if you're doing iterations and you're doing loops and you need to memorize how many times you need a loop. Maybe you've got it set up for 100 records, you know, and you've got like 30 places where you do that in. Well, you don't have to sit, you don't have to change. Okay, let me back up. Let's say you started off with 100 records and you do that in 30 places. And
Mhm.
you set up a sequence to go 100 records, a sequence function to do 100 records in a loop.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden somebody says, no, we need 200 records. Well, now you got to go there and you got to change it in 30 places. But if you put it in a constant up in the top and you call it max records, top what it was 100. Now you say max records 200 and you just changed it in all 30 places.
Mhm.
So those are a couple of good examples that just come to my mind right off the bat when you ask that question. And I'm sure there's more, and probably Darren can add some to that too. But I hope that helps.
I think it was a great answer, by the way. Nick, if you have any follow-up questions, enter anything for any clarifications there on what Kurt just said. But Kurt, I think it was you, whenever I worked on a lab, an assignment, which were like tests in your class, we turned them in. I think that you would look for any string literals we have in our code. Like, hey, if this text box says capital N/A, non-applicable, right? Then do something. And I might have a string literal that says NA. Would you have given me points off for that?
If you had it in more than one place, I would have for
Ah,
sure. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And I think you were a big influence on this, but if I ever am typing a string literal, um, because here's the thing, even if you just use it once, you might think you're going to only use it once, but you got a screen over here that's very similar. Oh, I might use that again.
Yep.
Now, and I think you were just talking about this, which is, hey, if you ever needed to change that, if it was a global constant, or in this case, it was in your app on start or the App.Formulas, you just change it one place.
Yeah.
So it comes down to this acronym called Don't Repeat Yourself.
Dry.
And
It's
let
very,
me
it's very
bring
dry.
this over here. And we wanted to give an overview of the app object. So we're doing the app on start, if I can spell. Mhm. And of course, we're going to be talking about App.Formulas here. Formulas.
And also, Nick, I want to remember that question because we're going to be going into these when we start working with the data a little bit towards the back half of this. We're going to be doing some more constant work with that. So
I would say these are the three things that we're going to be looking at, mentioning several times throughout this workshop. You have the app on start. We're very familiar with that. Then App.Formulas is where we're trying to move most of the stuff that we might think of putting the app on start. I would say maybe 90% of the stuff should be over there. And just to sort of finish up what we're saying about constants. There is no way to define a constant like this. And let's say if we did have some code and later on, of course, in PowerFX, you'd have to use the set keyword to do something like this. But this is like, let's say we got this constant, it's defined as 5 that cannot change. So if you'd write some code to try to put a different value in there, you would get an error. Okay. So I'm going to take this out because it's not really PowerFX code. So we got variables, collections, constants, initializing these things. And it used to be you would go here and at the end of the app dot on start, then you would finally say navigate to, whoops, I mean, if we reference a screen in single quotes, right? So we say home screen, and you put that at the end. And then about a year and a half ago or so, Microsoft made a change, and they gave us the app start screen. So we go, yeah, start screen down here. And it says you can't use navigate anymore. Use app.start screen. So what you'd have to do, now I only have one screen in here, screen one. You can have 100 lines of code in here, but it can't be imperative. It has to be declarative type of code. And the end result, the end value is going to be the value of a screen, a reference to a screen by its name.
Did you
So
just did you just cuss, Darren? Did you say imperative and declarative code? What is that? What is that?
well, that's a great question, Kurt. So um, let me think of a good example in the physical world between the two. Okay.
Okay.
So let's say we've got a car. Car is a great analogy for an object when learning object-oriented programming. And so we've got like a car has got like the body color. So I've got a cherry red car and the interior is black. Well, those could be two different properties. You know, when we bring over a label into Power Apps, it's got a color, which is the foreground color, and then you have fill, which is the background color. So examples of that where you're just like giving the information into an object to change maybe its appearance or whatever, those are called declarative. And this start screen is a declarative type of property. Notice it does not start with on. Okay. We only have 3 of those. So if it doesn't have a prefix on, that's going to be declarative. You can have a bunch of lines of code in here, no semicolons. Semicolons do not belong in declarative code in Power Apps. You will only find them in imperative.
So a
Okay.
semicolon that delineates multiple lines of code, multiple statements of code.
Yeah. And so let's give some examples here. Now if we have an object that's got
It,
Mhm.
can I Kurt phrase that once too?
Sure.
So a declarative code is going to be something that where you assign something a value, right? And declarative code is something that you're going to go out and perform. You're going to perform some tasks. Does that sound fair, or do I
I
got that?
think I think it's a step in the right direction, but if we write something, if we use a function like notify, are we modifying a value of a variable?
No.
Not really. We're getting the app to do something, which is display a little bar at the top with our message.
Right, and
Um,
that's what I was referring to. Yeah,
yeah. So patch, boom, a
we're doing
patch.
something.
We're doing something, right? Um, so the app object has got 3 of these on start. Well, it's got on start, then it's got, and I'm just talking about the imperative type of properties where you'll put your imperative code. So I'll go down here. We got on air, on message, and on start. So I'm going to type that in here. App on air. So the app on air is code that can run if there's an error that occurs in your app. Okay. And then there's an app dot message. Okay, so those are the three types of imperative code places we can put imperative code at in the app object. And
We got a couple questions.
okay, yeah, just give me 1 second.
Okay.
I think somewhere later on in our outline, we do have a plan to go over all the imperative and declarative. I think it's a good. I like the fact that you brought it up, Kurt. Right here we have imperative versus declarative. Maybe let's pull this up because this is really important to basic concepts, I believe.
Yeah, I just know when you say that for the first time and we haven't talked about, there might be some people out there that don't know what that is and they get lost, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get anybody get hung up.
Okay, so let's open this up. For now, App.Formulas is only for declarative code. So guys, if you have a set function, guess what? The set function allows you to declare and assign a value to a global variable. And it is imperative code. That means that you can't have a rectangle on your screen and for the fill, set a variable. You're going to get an error. And maybe for the first few months of Power, it's like, why is it sometimes I can use set and then other places I can't use set? I want to do, and you might be in a gallery for the data source. You might have the data source here, but maybe you want to put a set at the top before it does the filter down there. But because the item property of the gallery is declarative, you cannot use imperative functions or code in there. So yeah, so for now, we don't have this. So I think that eventually, I should say hopefully, eventually Microsoft will allow us to do this. Because whenever I've got in any other language that I've coded in the past, if I want something to happen, if you want something to happen, that's like an imperative thing. If I call like say hello world, it's going to probably use notify. I can't use that. So there's a lot of examples that might come to mind when you're thinking about using App.Formulas. You just can't use it. You can't use it. And I don't want you guys to be confused. Only declarative code goes into App.Formulas. Now I'll give you another example. App on start, you can have something like clear collect. You're going to set up your collection. You try to use clear collect over an App.Formulas, it's not going to work. So we're going to go over examples of how we would write that in App.Formulas because it still works over there. We just can't use that function. Okay. Okay, so here's yeah. So I pretty much already said this: imperative versus declarative.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of those topics later on in more depth as well.
Imperative code only goes in places that has, in fact, I can zoom up on this, that has on something. Okay. Okay, let's turn our attention to the questions that are coming in. And I see something that over here on YouTube. How
Yep.
on start affects the performance of the app when it starts? This is a great question. This is why Microsoft wants us to move away from app on start because when they started releasing, it's almost like a different flavor of Power Apps for teams. So you can create an environment for teams and you can develop Power Apps inside the team's environment. Okay. What they noticed was these apps that people were creating and publishing in teams were taking a long time to load up. And it was sitting there spinning and spinning. And you know what a typical user does? Oh, let me just close this down. Let me reboot. Like they want to stop. And then it's in the middle of loading up all the data and they're just like, cut it and then try to do it again. And then they start complaining, filling out tickets and so on and so forth. So what Microsoft has done, and I think this is a great move in the right direction, which is they created this App.Formulas, which what this workshop's about. And you want to put as much stuff over there as possible because some of the things that you got in the app on start, the first screen that comes up may not need all that stuff over an app on start. And they want you to move everything over to App.Formulas so it could just be called like you got like you'll see here in the syntax, we'll create a name for either a named expression or a user-defined function, and we'll give each one of those a name. So it doesn't like try to run all that code all at once, like app on start. Just whenever it's called, it will start running that. So it makes your application faster and performs better. So this question, how does it affect the performance? It's great. But specifically, Tutor says, how does app on start affect? It can really slow it down. It can really slow it down.
Yeah.
So that's why we want to be doing this type of stuff. Anything to add there, Kurt?
No, I think that was a great question, and exactly the reason why you go from OnStart over to the formulas is to increase your speed, you know.
Yeah. And I see another question from Nick. Can we make our own objects in Power Apps? Since I am making apps for aircraft, I want to make special properties for them, like their location and status. Right now, the only way to do that, and I hope they allow us to create our own objects in general, okay? But the only way to do that right now inside of Power Apps is to create a component. Now, I'm looking for this. That's what I'm looking for. So how do you do that? We're in the tree view here, and I click components. I thought I was clicking. Okay. So you can create a new component. Now they call them components. Back in the day, Kurt, when we were learning when I was learning object-oriented programming, you knew all about the OOP or OOPS long before I did. These components have a user interface. Okay. Now they don't have to have a user interface, but look what happens over here. I can create my own properties. Okay. And we've got input and output. And then there's another setting we can turn on in the settings that will allow us to have like two more property types, like behavior, and we've got stuff here, raise on reset when the value changes.
That's good.
So yeah, these components are very valuable. I wonder if I can move this caption stuff around. Cool. So that's how you can do that right now. Now, back in the day, Kurt, when you were teaching me object-oriented programming and Visual Basic 6, I could create my own class, and it wasn't necessarily a control. If we wanted to create our own button, which we did, we noticed back in VB6, you couldn't have a little icon or a picture inside your buttons. So we created our own ActiveX control button that we could use in VB, or really in a browser. ActiveX, you could drop it into your Visual C++ applications. And
the golden years, the good old days.
Also the time of DLL hell, by the way. You remember that?
It was great for programming, except for it was terrible for delivery, right? When you had to port it out. Oh,
yeah,
it's terrible.
Okay.
That's what they used to call plug and pray.
So guys, if you wanted this to be just a object where you throw all your functions, like you could have some imperative code here. It's not a bad idea.
And I think we shall have a workshop on component libraries. We shall have one. Yes, we will. We shall.
Look at this nice purple bar.
Something I was going to say. One thing I don't like about the component, I just want to throw that out there because this isn't about components, but it was just an answer to the question. You know, they do a really good job allowing you to introduce your own properties and even events, actually, right? But then they have that access app scope right there, and that just in my world it just shoots it all. It just shoots it all. You no longer have a component now. You know, you were doing a good job and then you did that, and there's probably a good reason why they're doing that right now. I just don't know it.
Well, Power Apps has been created for the citizen developer. And guys, the option that Kurt's referring to, if you don't already know, when you're creating a component, they have this thing called Access App Scope. And it allows a component like this to be able to access the global variables in the host application. What's a host application? Well, if you go over to this app that we're building here, this is the application that's using it or hosting.
Yeah.
And so it allows you to get at global variables. Now that violates object-oriented programming, um, like the four pillars of object-oriented programming. The four things that you should be able to do with real objects. Number one is encapsulation. Well, if anything can go in and out like that, oh, let me access this global. It's not encapsulated, is it, Kurt?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are some things that are violated. So we always recommend that people turn that off. Now, well, how is this object going to be able to get out of value? Well, create a property and make the developer pass in the value,
That's right.
you know?
That's right.
And so if I go back over to the screen,
It's like creating a door that you can plug into any house, but then in this one specific door, you have to be able to figure out what is the water flow of the hot water in order to do something. It's like, well, it's not a door now. It's a door that's depending on the house for some stuff. You know, it's like, no, you can't do that.
I heard somebody give me an example. Hey, what's the difference between a class and an object? The class is the definition, and the object is what you create out of it. Just like a blueprint,
Blueprint.
from one blueprint, you can create as many houses as you want. And those houses could have different front door colors and all that type of stuff. And what somebody said is whenever you create a static variable within a class, it's sort of like putting a 2x4 right on top of the blueprint.
Boy.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, I really had a hard time with that static thing. I really had a hard time with that, understanding it. Why? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so looking at YouTube, is it true that one custom component equals one control and so improves performance? I don't think so. Now, if what you're talking about is if I found this, I was on this project once and I said, listen, guys, and this was like 2 years ago. So some of this co-authoring stuff wasn't even being discussed or anything, but they were saying, "Oh, I found this article that says," and it was from a Microsoft blog, and so it was sort of official, and they could see that it is, and they sent it to me, and I'm like, "Hey, I can't be working in this Power Apps project if Barry is in there." I'm just made a name, fictitious name there, Barry. If he's in it, he's going to lock me out. Or if I'm in it, it's going to lock him out. Only one person can be there at a time before they started releasing the get feature that I believe is still experimental. And what the article said is if you want to have multiple developers work on the same Canvas application, what you do is you have somebody go off and create a component that can be added to the main app's screen. And you've got all your data sources in the app. So I went over it. I'm like, this was a nice thought, but I've never, that's like not even out there. Nobody's trying that. Nobody's doing that. And I think that it would break down, in the design of it actually working the way that you intended it. So anyway, even though you might put a bunch of controls into a component, and in some places says, hey, you really should have under 100 controls across your whole application, or it could be 500, or only 25 screens, no more, otherwise they'll get sluggish. I've had a one screen application be slow as heck, and then I've seen maybe a program that I've done that has 20 screens that's like 20 times faster than that one screen app, because the guy writing the one screen app was doing inefficient code, and I knew how to make mine efficient. So people pay a lot of attention to that. Oh, I'm getting too many controls here. It's like, well, just be efficient in what you're doing. And also think about it. Don't try to create one application for the whole organization that does everything for everyone. You know, create, like, if you want to keep track of time, just call it the time tracker app. And then you've got an electronics time sheet or something. Create a separate app for that. Don't try to include it in everything. So yeah, David says, by the way, you guys rock. Keep up the great work. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. And he also says here, yeah, use that for dark/light mode on navigation. Okay. Okay, very good. Now I don't see any unanswered questions here. So what I'm going to do is zoom out a little bit and let's go look back at our outline. Now, Kurt, am I missing? Is there anything that you've had in your mind that you'd like to say and you didn't want to interrupt me or?
Well, when he was talking about the many controls in a component and equaling one, I think in the old days with Visual Basic, you used to have control arrays, and you could actually, you could see a big limitation on slowdown when you threw a whole lot of controls on a form or on a screen. But you could put everything into a control array. You can have 75 controls into one control array, and it counts as one control. That's why I really hope that Power Apps is going to come up at some point, come up with control arrays. I think that will speed up things greatly. Imagine if you've got an entire form of text boxes and you just put them into a control array, and they would have an array of text boxes, and then you could address those each one at a time. I used to do that all the time within that, and then of course I would use the index of the array. I would have a constant to be able to tell me which control. Like if it was last name, it might have been text box 5, but I would put text box last name on there, and then that would work out just perfect. And it sped up the program so much by doing that. So I hope that they do that in Power Apps. I just can't wait till they do that. Plus, imagine the games, Mark. I know you're out there. I can't see you, but I know you're out there. Mark, imagine the games that we can make with Power Apps if we have control arrays. Imagine.
Your Yahtzee game would go to the next level.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It would be elite. And it might even be, I mean, what's that word that where it's really pristine, where it's just elegant?
Elegant.
Yeah. Might be elegant. All right.
All right, guys. So we've been live on YouTube for a good portion of the time, guys. I just want to give you guys a taste, let you guys know these workshops are going on, and maybe get a feel for maybe if you'd be interested in joining our little community for workshops. I've got a link in the description. That's the only thing in the description right now. It just links directly to that. And then what you can do, if you sign up right now, then what you can do is you can join us here in Zoom and it will continue and we'll probably be going to 5 p.m. EST. So what I'm going to do is I am looking for, I'm new to all this Zoom type of the webinar thing. So
Doing a good job too, Darren. Let me tell you.
Oh,
You do that
well,
way
thank
better
you.
than I could have. Because you're right. This is all new stuff for us. And I'd have been a fumbling, bumbling idiot, right? Over there going, what, where is that? Wait, no, you're doing a great job, man.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna hit stop live stream, but you guys here in Zoom are gonna